Welcome to the Mortgage Podcast, where we give tactics, strategies, and inspiration to get you to 10 plus loans per month. We talk a lot about how to make a ton of money in mortgage while also being happy and thriving in your personal life. If you want to be a mortgage millionaire, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mortgage Podcast, where we work on getting to 10 plus loans a month. That's what this is all about. This topic is why goal setting doesn't work for a lot of people. So I think we all know this. You've seen the stats, like people who set goals like 10x the results of people who don't. So the question becomes, why don't people set goals? And the simple answer to that is they don't want to shame themselves and feel let down. The first thing I would tell you around goal setting during this time of year where we're all working on this is I would say, don't expect yourself to hit every single goal. If you hit 60% of your goals, you're going to be very successful. You know, one of the things that I thought of the other day is I personally have always overestimated what I could get done in a year, but I way underestimated what I could achieve in a decade. Let me say that again. I way overestimated what I could get done in a year, but I way underestimated what I could get done in a decade. So let me illustrate this through a story. What I want you to think about because these are things that people don't talk, they talk about goal setting, but they don't understand the psychology behind it. So I'm only going to cover two things around this. One is the psychology of you not setting goals because you don't want to feel like a failure, the shamefulness. But the second reason is deeper, and that is we don't attach enough of what the goal is going to do for our lives. I've had a way of doing this because I think that everything that I set goals around, now personal goals like, I want to weigh this much or I want to play this super guitar riff, not as important. So I've always put a lot of emphasis, and most of you listening to this also do, on your career goals and your money goals, and maybe one or two others like spiritual and love life, okay? But for most people, they don't feel successful when they're in 100% commission sales unless they make a lot of commissions. And I hate to say that, I wish I wasn't that shallow. However, most of us are. And so you got to think about that. So how do we properly attach the goal to the feeling, the goal to the long-term outlook? And I'm going to illustrate this. So when I was young, I'm talking like 12 years old, I watched the movie Wall Street. And this is kind of embarrassing to say, but if you watch that movie, Gordon Gekko was the super rich guy that took over companies, and then he sold the companies and made a lot of money. And he was a shark, right? Very rich man, Gordon Gekko. Bud Fox was a stock trader, and he wanted the whale. He wanted to go after Gordon Gekko. So it turns out that Bud Fox did some bad things to get Gordon's business, and Gordon was kind of crooked, so he kind of encouraged it, and they did some insider trading, and the whole thing blew up. But when I watched that movie, I thought, I need to make a lot of money. Like, I need to do something special. And I know that sounds weird for a 12-year-old, but this is when my mindset. And it was a thing. It wasn't like a little thing. So I started to think about going to college. I got to go to college because I'll never work on Wall Street if I don't go to college. No one's going to hire me. So I said, I'm going to go to college. So then that turned into, I'm not only going to go to college, I'm going to put myself through college because neither one of my parents are going to pay for it. And I'm going to do it with no debt. Now, I didn't go to an expensive college. I went to Sac State University, but still you got to support yourself. You got to pay for room and board. You got to pay for tuition and books. So I had this idea. And when I was working for my father, and I went to my dad and I said, look, I make pretty good money. Like, I'm not going to find a job where I can make, at the time I'm making about $3,000 a month, which is probably like $7,000 a month in today's dollars, because that was 6 years ago. So Dad, I'll work for you and I'll just drive back and forth. It was a 3-hour drive. I'll take classes Tuesday. I'll study Wednesday. I'll take classes Thursday. I'll drive home and work for you on Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, take Sunday off, work all day Monday, drive back to Sacramento. So that's what I did. I was in Sacramento 3 days a week and working for my dad 4 days a week. So then, but I was determined. I was like, I'm not going to have debt. So that's why I made that decision. I built up that company's sales to the point to where we were doing about 10 times the amount of sales as we did 4 years ago. And we had a chance to sell the company to a competitor. So I negotiated the sale with the competitor with my father, and that company offered me a really good job. I'm talking making about $2 more grand a month with a company car and a big old brick cell phone, if you remember those. So I was pretty hotsy-totsy with a company car. So I worked for that company and I did really well. And that was my last 2.5 years of college. And I ended up graduating with no debt. And I went straight into the mortgage business. So why do I tell you that? I tell you that so that you understand if you care about something enough and it's very important to you from an emotional level, you will accomplish that goal. And most people don't have conviction at the level that they need it to in order to go through the really hard things in order to achieve the goal. If you go back to my story, I didn't want to be in Redding, California, small town working for my dad on the weekends. I worked 6 days a week, right? If you do the math, 6 days a week, I'm going to college full time and I'm working full time. I wanted to party on the weekends. I was in my early 20s. I wanted to go drink beer and I wanted to date girls. I didn't have much time to do any of that because the goal was more important than the partying. The goal was more important than other things. And so if you attach that in a big way, then it makes sense. Move on. So I sat next to this guy when I first started. I wanted to do 10 loans a month. Why? Because he was 2 years in mortgage and he was doing 10 loans a month. And I figured if he could do it, I could do it. So I learned to befriend him. I learned to go on sales calls with him because I asked him to. I asked him to be my coach for no pay, by the way. I took him golfing. I would buy him coffee. Sure enough, about 13 months later, I had my first month where I closed 10 loans. Then I wanted to do 20 loans. And so I figured out how to do 20 loans because it was important to me. Fast forward 33 years later, I'm working in my mortgage company. I'm working on 250 loan officers averaging 10 loans a month. That's my vision. I don't need to be the biggest company. It brings me great joy to teach someone and use the things that we do to get them from 3 or 4 loans a month to 7 or 8 to 10. And I've done it hundreds of times and I'm going to do it with all those 250. But I'm very attached to it. Like when I say attached to it, I think about it all the time. I'm listening to podcasts on how to do certain things that I'm weak in. Like I'm very attached to it. It's not a thought, it's an action. So as we go through the goal setting process, what I want you to translate, this is where people miss, is they don't attach the goal enough to the outcome and what it will do for them long term. Let me give you an example probably that is more relatable. 2 examples. A single woman with no kids, and she wants to make $100,000 a year so that she can buy a new car. Nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong at all. But take that same woman, and she now has 2 kids, and she's a single mom, and she wants to make $100,000 a year so that she can get into an apartment because right now she's living with her aunt, and her aunt is an alcoholic, and she's bitchy, and she's not a good example for her 2 kids, and she knows it. The why on example number 2 is much greater because it has to do with our children. And those of you that have children, you have to think for 1 second. What would you not do for your kids? The answer is for 97% of people is nothing. Now, you're like, Todd, that's different. Those are emotional. That's our children. Okay, well, this is your career. It's your money. And all of that affects everything. So with example number 1, if I just want a new car, I could probably make 80 grand a year and still get the new car. But the mom with 2 kids that wants to protect her kids' environment and put food on the table, it's much more emotional to her. And so she has a much higher chance of doing it. My point is you can self-create that emotion level in any of your goals. Any of your goals. If it's super important to you to be in great physical shape and you've attached living longer, feeling better, maybe your family has a history of health problems and you don't want that, and you just constantly manifest being in great shape, you will do it. But if you just want to be in great shape because it's a good idea, you will not do it. So here's the idea. When you go into the goal setting, obviously make smart goals, right? Make them specific, make them achievable, put a date to them. I think most of us know that. What I'm asking you to do is put a lot of emotion to a couple of them, or maybe just to one. And some people, when I teach this, they're like, Todd, you're just saying this because you own a company, because you're an employer. I'm like, no, I know a lot of people. And when they're really happy with their career, like ecstatic, they're really good at it. Most of their life goes pretty damn well. I know thousands of people just like you, Think about it for a second. Think about the top 10 people that have the best lives that you would want to mirror or mimic. Every single one, like 9 out of 10 of those people have a very satisfying career. Now, does that always mean they make hundreds of thousands of dollars? No, but in mortgage it does. In 100% commission sales it does, because that's the measuring stick. Why else would you do it? You could make $100,000 a year working for corporate America and not have all the stress and worry. So attach your goals. When you do goal setting, find one that is super important. You're that mom that doesn't want to raise your kids with an alcoholic aunt. You could do it, but you know it's not the right thing for them. So you're determined to change it. Use that same mentality and get uber focused on the why, both short-term and long-term, behind the outcome. That will allow you to set much better goals. Much better goals. Not only set those goals, it'll help you actually achieve them. So again, to summarize, 2 thoughts. One is set goals. Don't worry about shaming yourself. There's years where I only get 60% of my goals done. There's years where I get 80% done. I don't really care. I don't shame myself if I miss some of them. As long as I made a little bit of progress, I'm good. So that's one concept. The second concept behind goal setting, which is more important, is to heavily attach your needs, your desires, your wants, your passion to the main goal so that you achieve it. And all of that, when you start doing this, the negativity didn't hit this one goal. Or like, let's say you set an income goal and I'm going to make $250,000, you made $230,000. But it was a lot more than you made the previous year. That's a win as far as I'm concerned, right? We were close. It's probably a 90% grade, which is an A. So people overanalyze all these things, but they don't give the main goal enough focus. They don't put enough emotion behind it. And honestly, if you think about it, like there's some people, like I've done a good job of making money and saving money. I don't need to work, but I'm still as passionate about certain goals as I've ever been in my life. Why? Because I've learned to think this way. Yeah, I've learned that's where the enjoyment is. I learned that the journey of getting to the goal is just as important as reaching the goal. And that's what's important. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some insight into what really successful people do around the whole goal setting exercise. This is one of those that you could share with other salespeople. You could share it with your kids. So please give me one share, because that's how this stuff grows. I don't pay for content and ads and all that stuff. It just grows organically. And if you got value from this, press the like button and also share it to one person. I would really appreciate it. Bless you all. Let's have a great 2026.